Kia ora, everybody. Very good to be here today. We're going to have a brief introduction to emotional intelligence, very important thing. And it's a great pleasure to welcome Shawn Cornet to tell us a little bit about it. He's an expert in it.
Hi.
So let's start, Shawn. We'll just have a brief chat. So what is it? What is emotional intelligence?
Oh, emotional intelligence is basically blending your thinking and your feeling to make optimal decisions. Or in its simplest format, people like to think of it as basically just being smarter with your feelings.
And why is it important, Shawn?
Emotional intelligence is important because it impacts the way that we interact with people, it impacts our effectiveness, and ultimately emotional intelligence impacts our performance. So there's a saying I always like to think of, that emotions drive people and people drive performance. So because it impacts our performance, emotional intelligence is very important.
So it's a really foundation for lots of things in work and outside. How then does it really affect me in the workplace? Just explain that to me.
For sure, emotional intelligence, as I've said previously, it impacts our effectiveness at work, it impacts our performance, and there's certain things that emotional intelligence drive. And in particular, it drives our effectiveness, it drives relationships, our quality of life, and it also impacts our emotional and physical well-being, which are also pertinent to our workplace and how we work. So it has such a relevant importance at work because it impacts these different areas.
All parts of our life, really. But what I really want to know, Shawn, is am I born with EQ or can I learn it?
Oh, that's a great question. Emotional intelligence is a skill that we can learn. So through different experiences, through us doing reflection and being conscious of how we're showing up, it's a learnable skill. So it's something we work on throughout our lives, like you said, in our workplace or at home.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a skill that is learnable.
Oh, that's a relief.
For sure, yes.
Well, the other thing is that, is there a way of my knowing if I've got good EQ?
Interesting, you should ask that, because so many people say to me, oh, I have a high level of emotional intelligence. And they get that from reflecting back and thinking, oh, I'm able to manage my emotions, so I must have a great level of emotional intelligence. But the real way for us to assess someone's emotional intelligence is through using an assessment tool, and we like to use the 6 seconds emotional intelligence EQ tool. Okay. And this tool basically looks at 3 dimensions of emotional intelligence. It looks at the know yourself area, choose yourself, and give yourself.
Right. I think, Shawn, when we finish the interview, I'm going to pop up that framework onto our website because I found it really helpful to look at. So I think it's a little circle, isn't it? It's just, you've got a little picture of it.
Yes, I've got a little picture over here. So you can see it there.
Yep.
It's 3 dimensions, or it's got 3 pursuits. The blue section is the know yourself area. Then the red section is the choose yourself area. And the green section is the give yourself area. So basically, the know yourself has to do with your self-awareness.
Yeah.
The red section, the choose yourself, has to do with your own self-management. And the green section has to do with your own self-direction.
That's great. Thank you. Well, we can look at it more, but perhaps you could just illustrate for me, perhaps, are they called dimensions in the know yourself? Or
actually pursuits, yes.
Pursuits.
They're different pursuits or areas.
Tell me the 2 in there to get us interested.
Oh, for sure. I'd love to tell you a little bit more about the know yourself area. So this know yourself area all has to do with your own self-awareness and what really makes you tick. And like you've so rightly said, within each pursuit, there are certain competencies that drive our emotional intelligence. And within the know yourself area, we have enhanced emotional literacy, and then we also have recognizing patterns. So enhanced emotional literacy is all about you understanding your own emotions, being able to name those emotions in certain situations, and being able to understand where does that emotion come from. So what has caused the emotion, and what is the impact of my emotion?
Right.
and really makes you understand that particular area. And then the recognized patterns makes us reflect and think about what behaviors am I portraying that are patterns that either work well for us or don't work well for us. Because we all have patterns. For example, getting up in the morning to go to gym every morning at 5 o'clock is a pattern that possibly works well for you. But possibly, should you shout at your boss every time you get into a disagreement, that could be a pattern that doesn't work well for you. So it's really about identifying those patterns or behaviors that you portray that either work well for you or don't work well for you.
Oh, I understand. I can imagine, though, that although I might try and assess myself, I probably need somebody else to reflect back to me how I'm coming over as well. Is that right? Can I assess myself, or should I really try to get other people to help me understand myself?
Well, assessing yourself is a great place to start.
Okay.
But, just creates that self-awareness, that initial self-awareness.
Yeah.
But if you want to go into more detail, it's much better to approach someone who is able to assess your emotional intelligence and how the different competencies that impact that.
And then that person can help me work out ways of improving. I'm sure everybody has to improve, don't they, Shawn?
Oh, for sure, Sheena. There's different areas that we all need to improve on. And through the 6 seconds emotion intelligence assessment, we're able to evaluate those different competencies in those different pursuits. Yeah. And then we're able to help you put that into practice and put emotion intelligence into action by putting it into your daily life, whether at work or at home. Because like you said earlier, emotion intelligence is something that can impact our personal life, but also our professional life.
Thank you so much. That's a very helpful introduction. And I think the people who are listening will find it very helpful to go and look at that 6 seconds framework to get them thinking more and beginning to assess themselves and work out what they need to improve. Shawn, I'd like to thank you very much for introducing us to this. Is there anything you want to add before we go?
Oh yeah, I'd just like to say that, emotions are contagious. So it's so important that we reflect on what emotions are we carrying with us to the workplace and how those emotions impact us, but more importantly, how do they impact the people that we work with? And just like you said at the beginning, Shin, emotion intelligence is something that we can learn, but it's a journey. So it's something that we can work on each and every day. And the more we work on it and put it into practice, the more it will be able to impact our performance and help us create and lead to greater success in our lives.
The idea of contagion is important because I certainly can think of somebody coming into a room with a particular emotion and it pervades the room. And then we all catch it. So, okay, that's a very good point to finish. Shawn, I'd like to thank you very much for giving time to talk to us.
No, well, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.